Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from in the world today, or if you're watching us on catch up, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 6th live panel of 2025 for the Situation Room. It's part of a series we have every month throughout the year. Situation Room is a thought leadership forum and it's all about engagement. So please do ask questions if you get a chance to today, if you're watching it live. We've had an article running on PFAS or forever chemicals since the start of this month. So it's a chance today to ask questions of our panel of experts. If you've got questions, things you'd like us to ask, just pop them in the Q&A and we'll get to as many as we can. If we run out of time, we'll aim to answer them later in the Situation Room forum, because this is a subject that will live on, of course, much like forever chemicals. So today, I've got with me Mike Kinsella, the Norwegian Hospital Procurement Trust, a specialist advisor on environment and climate. She's working on procurement organisation for all of Norway's hospitals, and we'll be hearing from her later in the panel. We've got Matt Burns from one of our partners, our key strategic partner of WSP. He's the Vice President, a Technical Fellow and a Technical Director of the Environment. So he's a key partner for us in bringing a lot of this to life. Emma Holmberg is with us today. She's from EcoOnline, like I am. She's our Technical Quality and Compliance Manager focused on chemical management. And I'm David Picton. I'm the EcoOnline Senior Vice President of Safety and Sustainability. So our focus for the next 25 minutes or so is PFAS, or perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They're almost as hard to get rid of as they are to say. So originally hailed as the miracle substances of the modern age for their durability, their heat resistance, water, grease repellent properties, these are chemicals with strong carbon-fluorine bonds, but they're so strong that they rarely break down. There's more than 4,700 variations that have been made over the last 75 years, and they're part of a group of over 10,000 known substances. You probably most commonly come across them in textiles, cookware, packaging, electronics and beyond, but they are a problem. Because they don't break down, they're accumulating in drinking water, soil, food, even in rain, and they're certainly accumulating in our bloodstreams. It can be linked to some serious health issues, cancers, fertility problems, development delays, liver, thyroid issues, and there's contamination detected in nearly 23,000 sites across Europe. Now, around 1 in 7 teenagers are thought to have been exposed to PFAS levels above health guidelines, and an estimated 97% of Americans have PFAS in their bodies. But they've also been highly beneficial. Use in pacemakers, prosthetic limbs, safer cooking utensils, of course, and hygiene, even firefighting foams as well. So it's not just a simple answer of saying, let's stop using PFAS. This is why we chose it for our September topic, and we've got the panel with us today to talk about this very complex and tricky issue and to learn a little bit about what some of them are doing about it and what their advice might be. So to our headline question, who can take the lead to tackle PFAS chemicals? Can businesses do that, or does it need strong coordinated regulation? Matt, I wonder if we could come to you first to ask you about that.
Sure, great. Thank you for that introduction and setting the table with the background there. But I think the basics are that businesses respond to economic incentive. Fundamentally, they need consumer demand for their goods and services. So reputational risk from public concern can get negatively impact the demand. So later on top of that, whole economic incentive is the layer of the businesses need to comply with governmental regulations, or their ability to operate jeopardized. On the consumer demand side, PFAS public awareness and consumer sentiment is just beginning to grow. Some PFAS chemicals are highly toxic and their common use probably should be eliminated, but most people really don't understand the wide toxicity variations across the entire PFAS family. Instead, they've developed a little bit of a visceral reaction that all PFAS are bad based on a combination of messaging from reactionary media and really the lack of sound science that's able to counter these negative views with facts. So public concerns is driving toward elected officials to act. Right? So at times the elected officials are acting ahead of the science. again, there's a huge variation in the toxicity of PFAS across that entire family. In addition, the public remains relatively uninformed about the benefits of some of these substances, and what the impacts of total removal will have on them as workers and consumers. So what we have now with respect to commerce restrictions is a big tangle of actual and proposed regulatory restrictions on PFAS. Some are broad and super aggressive and maybe even unnecessary. Others are more targeted with respect to the specific chemicals and uses in specific products. The tangle makes it difficult for international manufacturers to identify actions they need to perform to remain regulatory compliant and satisfy their customers. But it's also an opportunity for manufacturers. PFAS is a disruptor to businesses. Businesses that navigate the tangle of restrictions and consumer demands will ensure that they retain or maybe even grow their market share, and those that don't will fall behind. So.
Thanks,
Did I
Matt.
get your question there?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I think it's pretty complex. Yeah. Emma, what can you add perhaps in who can take the lead to tackle PFAS chemicals and whether business can do that or it needs regulation? I think we might have just temporarily lost Emma there just a second. Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. Emma, I think you might be back with us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that businesses and regulators, they can't really do without, one cannot do without the other. So they need to share the front line of progress, really. And once these safer alternatives become available, then regulations can and should be strengthened. So I really think they need to go hand in hand. And we see this for firefighting foams, for example, where alternatives meet safety standards are now becoming available due to restrictions on some PFAS substances earlier. And currently we see proposed regulations to ban and restrict all PFAS in firefighting foams in several markets. So you can see that they interact with each other. And I think also regulation plays a critical role in driving transparency and requiring chemical disclosure, because businesses need clear information about where PFAS are present in their supply chains in order to act on that. So increased transparency is really important, and regulation can play a role there as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Emma.
And third, I also sorry, I could just one more.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Regulation also helps with ensure a level playing field, or at least it should do, I think. And that's why international coordination is so important, because we need that there is a demand for these alternatives wide as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Good, thank you. No, really good. Love it. I mean, really interesting, as you say, very clear points there in trying to get to the heart of how we can tackle this. Mike, and I wonder if we could come to you now, because specifically with a question about the work that you've been doing to phase out products containing PFAS. I think there is some collaboration between European healthcare systems as well. Could you tell us more about your work and maybe that collaboration?
Yes, thank you, David. I can definitely do that. We've had a cooperation with other Nordic countries for a long time, and phasing out hazardous chemicals on a general basis, where PFAS is one of them, at least since the European Healthcare's phase-out list for chemicals of concern was ready in November 21. But we've been working on it since before that as well, when the Norwegian Hospital Procurement Trust, Sykehusinnkjøp, was founded back in 2016. And my colleagues at Oslo University Hospital had been working on it even before that. So we have, well, as it says in the introduction to the phase-out list, there's a wish to accelerate the phase out of the highest priority chemicals of concern, primarily. And the healthcare sector will continue to work with suppliers to achieve that goal. And we make exemptions to the criteria when safer alternatives don't exist in the market. And also, of course, when it's specifically requested for essential use. So it takes time to coordinate big healthcare systems from different countries, even those as similar as Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So we've been working with them, but Norway has had a leading role, and we started a bit earlier than the others, exactly on the current European phase-out list. But the Swedish regions and Danish regions specifically, who are also involved in developing it, have been doing it also for a long time, and they've also, in some cases, they also set even stricter requirements than what's on the phase-out list. So yeah, but the goal is to try to coordinate ourselves so that it will be easier also for the suppliers to relate to, that we're trying to set the same demands and criteria in our public procurements.
Good work. Thank you for it. It sounds like cooperation is essential, and the exchange of information to share what you're learning with both suppliers and between different trusts as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Matt, I wonder if we could call on you again to share perhaps some examples of the work that WSP is doing to tackle the PFAS challenge.
Well, the clients we're advising now are among the first to holistically address PFAS. So most come to us knowing that they have some PFAS in their supply chain. They want to be compliant. They want to keep their customers happy. We help them by defining the full extent of PFAS in the supply chain. And that can get very, very tricky because disclosure laws, like those that dictate the content of safety data sheets, haven't caught up to these commerce restrictions and the toxicity of PFAS. So looking for hidden PFAS is really important to be able to identify where they could be because they're not usually explicitly stated, or not always explicitly stated. We also evaluate the potential for inadvertent PFAS transformation byproducts generation. This is an important regulatory disclosure nuance in some jurisdictions. Another challenging task we advise is on navigating the tangle of those global regulations. We've recently evaluated regulations related to a client's plastic container product line, including some very high-end plastic containers like those that are used in the medical field. Some of which come into contact with food also. So, and just as a background, I've looked at lots of data in PFAS and plastics. It can be really challenging to find PFAS free, especially recycled plastics. There's lots of PFAS uses as manufacturing aids and performance enhancers in the plastics industry. Anyhow, globally, went back to that example as with the plastics container, we found that there were more than 30 jurisdictions that had applicable PFAS commerce restrictions, that would impact the sale of these containers. And the restrictions weren't uniform. There were lots of variations between the regulations in different jurisdictions, like definitions of PFAS intentionally added and unavoidable use varied. Labeling and testing requirements vary. PFAS concentration thresholds varied, and the implementation dates also varied. But by identifying those actual and proposed regulations or restrictions, we're able to thread together a least common denominator set of criteria that would allow the manufacturer to sell their products in any of those 30 jurisdictions. Manufacturers don't want to have to set up different formulations for different jurisdictions, so they need, commerce is global, so they need that certainty of being able to produce in one jurisdiction and ship it all around the world. Yeah, but after identifying that known and hidden PFAS and the untangling that global regulatory web, then you can start to really prioritize, the actions to get you on a path to be compliant with regulations and consumer demands.
Interesting. And that point about global commerce, I think, is just adding to the huge complexity, isn't it, of course, of trying to tackle this. In that vein, we had a great question which just came in asking whether we know of any agency or company that's taking the lead in consolidating information into a catalogue of known PFAS sources. Emma, have you seen anything like that? Any agency taking the lead to catalogue PFAS, or is it not working that way?
I mean, there are several, but as Matt was suggesting or saying, that there are different definitions of PFAS, but there is OECD database that has one definition where you can find a quite comprehensive list of PFAS. But you also have the EPA list in the US, and there are like NGOs like Chemsec here in Sweden that have also listed PFAS. So there are a lot of initiatives to gather all these in one list.
That's great. I didn't realize that much work had gone into it already. That's really interesting. Thanks, Emma. Mike, and I wonder if we could come back to you. Sorry, yes, Matt, of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's also publications out there that people should be, take a look at that describe the full extent of PFAS within commerce, like, Gluge et al., Gaines. They're great articles for people to get a handle on just how far PFAS have penetrated into society. Yeah,
okay. Like you said, I think at the start, really, the mass of the public, I think, really perhaps uninformed about how much has already gone into this. To start that work. And looking at that work, Mike, and I wonder if we could come to you next. One of EcoOnline's technology products, Chemical Manager, can help in perhaps the process of finding substitutions. Could you tell us a bit more about your experience with that?
Well, what I can say is that all the hospitals in Norway are using Chemical Manager. But as the name implies, it's for the safety data sheets on chemicals primarily. And there are a few products in our system that contain PFAS, and those are quite easy to locate. And it also helps the hospitals to either stop using it or replace it with a product that doesn't contain PFAS. But most of the products with PFAS that we are using, they don't require safety data sheets. So, and also as Matt mentioned, a lot of the products may have hidden PFAS that we don't even know of. So what we've been thinking is that one possible solution to this could be that all the collected environmental information of the products we have, that we could use Chemical Manager to identify and find good alternatives to PFAS, and that we could then maybe also make a small adjustment to the Chemical Manager so that it could be something like a product manager in addition to a Chemical Manager, like that it could be a database for products.
Okay, it's a good idea. Thank you. And building on that, Emma, of course, you're very familiar with our product Chemical Manager. Can you add to perhaps what Mike may have said with your experience and work you've seen with the product?
Yeah, sure. And it's true that Mike says that, I mean, Chemical Manager is mainly for chemical products, even though you have the opportunity to add also other things. But I would say my experience is like that people become aware that they need to substitute when they start using Chemical Manager. Because, I mean, the first step in the substitution process is to gather information about your chemical products, if we're talking about chemical products now then, and analyze their contents, and list to identify problematic substances such as PFAS. And my experience is that when companies do that in Chemical Manager, it can really be an eye-opener. Like they actually see what they are using every day in their business and in their activities. And when you have gathered all information in one place, you can start working systematically with substitution, compare products and alternatives with each other, and also document substitutions directly in the system to show process, because that's also important. And I think also one other aspect is that to succeed with substitution and this process long-term, so need to prevent new unwanted products to entering the organization an issue. And to have an approval process integrated in your digital system is something that has proven very helpful in this case. So that's my findings, that people become more aware when they start to gather all the information that they have and that they need to have for their chemical products.
Yeah, very, very interesting. As you say, perhaps shining a light on this just starts to bring it to the front of people's attention, like many things. In fact, Matt, I wonder if we could come back to you now. Do you, in your view, should or even could companies be forced to be more transparent about the PFAS they're responsible for and adding to the world?
Yeah, it gets challenging, right? Because as Mike had mentioned, that a lot of times PFAS information is not captured by safety data sheets. So instead, you really need to look for those hidden PFAS by looking at PFAS characteristics in the descriptions within the safety data sheets and technical data sheets. Those characteristics are like water, grease, and stain repellents, thermal and chemical stability, low friction, surface active properties. So it can get pretty challenging to be transparent, right? But I think the existing frameworks are out there. There just needs to be a little bit more requirements that these toxic chemicals are actually disclosed. But we need to be careful of being overly restricted. We need to follow the science. As we mentioned in the introduction, there are some PFAS applications that provide benefits that really outweigh the risk, or at least the benefit to risk ratio that we're working with right now. Sometimes the PFAS can be controlled, cradle to grave, so that maybe we should be using them in certain applications. Products like medical devices, medications, some fluoropolymer uses, some uses in the electronic industry, and many others provides huge benefit to society. So I think that the existing framework is there. It just the regulations need to catch up to the science, and the science needs to keep on progressing.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Matt. Mike, and I think you had a view as well, potentially, in whether companies could or should be forced to be more transparent about PFAS.
Yes, when I've been presenting our work in this area before, on several occasions, I have said that suppliers don't know what they are selling and we don't know what we are buying. And I'm not saying that to provoke anyone. I would be very happy if someone could prove me wrong. But so far, nobody has said anything other than, like, one person came up to me after a presentation once, not so long ago, and he said, "Hello, I'm one of those who don't know what I'm selling." So I think transparency is extremely important. It's just that in the way the market works, people are, they have sub-suppliers of parts and this and that, which makes it maybe sometimes a bit difficult to be fully in control of everything. And then also because of this issue we've mentioned several times now with hidden PFAS, that it doesn't say that there's PFAS, but it might have some of the same properties. And then it's like, could it possibly be that it is actually PFAS or not? And again, to not end up in a regrettable substitution kind of situation, we really need to find out how to work on this together. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Well, in that sort of topic, Emma, I wonder if we could just come to you and ask what your advice might be, or what lessons there might be for other organizations when they're considering this challenge.
Yeah, well, I would say, if not done already, start by mapping out where PFAS are used in your products and processes. And as both Mike and Matt have touched upon, it can be difficult since it's not, you say, where PFAS are present. They do not require labeling in many times, and it can be present in not declared in safe data sheets, for example. And that's why I think it's essential to build relationship with your suppliers and ask for transparency and documentation, just as I said, and be clear about your ambition to phase out PFAS, but also collaborate with the supplier to find alternatives. And also, I think, as you seem to do, Mike, as well, to help building knowledge among suppliers, because they don't know enough to give you the information you need. But we should encourage to investigate on their end as well. So again, a collaboration. I think it's here, and to have clear goals.
Perfect. Thank you there. Mike, and perhaps just to return to you in the work you've done, what advice do you think you might add, or lessons for other organizations?
Well, are you primarily thinking of other public buyers or companies or both?
Anything really, any advice? I think you've made some great progress. So any advice you think that anyone might find helpful? Yeah.
Well, what we did is that we've started with using goals or setting demands on essential products. So what we definitely need to do is to contribute towards only essential use, so that medical products where we need it, where there's no good alternative in the market, okay, then we make exemptions from the phase-out list. But when it comes to regular consumer products like clothes and tablecloths, we can manage to wash those. We don't need them to be water and grease repellent necessarily.
Sure.
So I'm thinking there, the environment and our health needs to weigh in. So start with the most important products. If you're a producer or a buyer, to check and be aware of what you have in those, and for the buyers to say that you don't want the worst chemicals in them. And yeah, we are willing to share our methods and how we've done it, share our experiences in more detail with anyone. So any other buyers, get in touch, and producers, if they want to ask any questions, they can also get in touch later on.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike, and that's really good. So, we're almost out of time, so it's really just the last question, I think, if we may. Matt, I wonder if we could come to you first and say, what do you think the future looks like for the issues and challenges presented by PFAS, forever chemicals?
Yeah, there's lots of challenges for PFAS, and we haven't even solved drinking water issues. So, but commerce is going to play a key role. Stop making the situation worse, right? Emma mentioned AFFF. That's a great example of commerce restrictions. They're going to end up helping the cause down the road. But I think the biggest thing that needs to be paid attention to by manufacturers is that customers, like Emma, are putting specifications on their products. There are regulations that have PFAS content specifications. Like California has a lot right now. So thresholds of concentrations that are easily exceeded by plastics, just general plastics, raw materials. So manufacturers really need to know their supply chain And it's not good enough just to accept, to the best of our knowledge, answers from their suppliers. You need to dig in, because their viability and ability to sell their product and their liability for selling product that has PFAS in it, and even inadvertently, is on them. So manufacturers need to find those hidden PFAS and then start rooting them out.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. That's really interesting and a great way to finish up there. Mike, and I wonder if we could ask you the same question, what you think the future looks like for the issues and challenges presented by PFAS?
Well, I'm hoping and thinking that it will force itself through the limitations, different limitations on non-essential use and that kind of thing, which I touched upon earlier. I mean, there's no doubt that it's a huge challenge, not only for PFAS, but also other chemicals that we're using. But we have to make some important and strict choices as to where to use it and where not to use it. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm like optimistic or pessimistic as to how this is going, but we are trying to do our part, at least from the hospital sector.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all you can do, I think, for now, and just raise awareness like you're doing. Yeah. And Emma, just to finish up with you, really, the last point, what do you see in the future for these issues and challenges?
Well, I think we'll see a growing pressure both the public and regulators to take real action on PFAS. And I know already now countries are tightening drinking water standards, and there is a shift towards broader bans instead of targeting one chemical at a time, which has not been so efficient. And I also think, like Matt touched upon that as well, that awareness has increased to the point where organizations need to be proactive. So just following the law is not enough. So I definitely think that we will see movement. So I want to to end on a positive viewpoint here, but big challenges remain, like detecting unknown PFAS, cleaning up pollution, and finding good alternatives, of course. But I think we will see a lot of action the coming years.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Well, and that's a great place to start to start the debate, if you like, for people to take away thoughts from everything we've said today, but also to end our debate for today. So I want to say a huge thank you to Mike and to Matt, to Emma for joining us today and for sharing a lot of information in a very packed 30 minutes there. That hopefully, talk about some of the hidden PFAS and the challenges, the tangle, the complex international regulations, but also give some hope, I think, for the fact that this is an issue which is being addressed. And I think the best advice would be, if it's not something you're looking at in your organization, you should certainly start, because there's no better time than today to start looking at that. So thank you, team. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you that joined us. If you watched us live, thank you for joining us. If you're watching on catch up, thank you for taking the time. Have a look at the Situation Room, please do, because there's more topics coming out every month. Our next topic for next month will be cyber security. And so we're looking at all those sorts of risks that face organizations. But for now, for today on Forever Chemicals, thank you for joining us, and we hope you found it useful. Thanks.
Thank you.